Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you very much, Kevin, for passing along from all this previous information. Just to give you a little bit more information about me. So as noted before, I am the Director of Systems here at Fairleigh Dickinson University. I have over 20 years of IT experience. I have been through my various IT career through technology, spent a considerable amount of time in retail, and I found my way back to higher ed and higher education. And specifically, I'm an FDU alumni, so I actually came back from whence I started, just from an educational point of view, and also to provide a little more of what I've learned from the corporate world, whether it be in technology and retail, back to helping FDU, that which helped me to start my journey. And just to go a little bit about the university, Fairleigh Dickinson University is a private institution. It was founded in 1942. The Fairleigh Dickinson was actually named, the name manufacturer was actually Colonel Fairleigh Stratton Dickinson Sr. And he was actually the founder of Becton Dickinson, which is also prominent nowadays, especially with the coronavirus and all the medical concerns that are going on. The university, right now we have about enrollment a little under 9,000. We do offer graduate and PhD programs and other certificate programs, and we're spaced out over 4 campuses, 2 in New Jersey, 1 in Vancouver, and then we have a study abroad program in Roxton, England. And for those of you who are familiar with our campus, if you look on the right side, that picture there is a picture of our mansion. It's been, and that one's in Madison, that's been featured in a couple of movies throughout time, and it's actually a beautiful place to actually go and visit as well. And recently, Fairleigh Dickinson is actually ranked as number 50 in the regional best universities in the North. But really, we're talking about identity access management, and where does that fit in overall? So let me just paint a picture of really and truly where we see ourselves from an identity management point of view. We're providing a service as part of identity management. I look at it as 4, in essence, kind of services altogether: authentication services, authorization services, user management services, and directory services. And below that, there are various pieces that go along with that, whether it be SSO, your multi-factor authentication, various roles and permissions that go with various levels within the university, deprovisioning within the university. And in looking at the architecture that we have, we were using Microsoft Micro Focus NetIQ identity management. That was originally a NetIQ product, which then got purchased by Micro Focus, and has gone through various iterations since that point in time. We also, for our SSO portal, are using Shibboleth, very common open source, well-known product that we have come to learn, come to know, and come to support. And as part of our provisioning process, we do actually have a lot of homegrown and custom applications built in as part of our provisioning portals for both our students, faculty, and staff that need to access any of our systems. And then for federation, we are using Microsoft's ADFS services. To paint a little bit more of a picture of how that looks like in our environment, we currently have our ERP system, which then would feed through the NetIQ product, legacy NetIQ product, which would then go into Active Directory, and it would actually have various hooks into other pieces within the infrastructure. A lot of what we see here is somewhat little cumbersome. And from the challenges that we're experiencing is that it's somewhat inflexible, and with the growing challenges and needs of the university with limited staffing and the growing need to be modern, this is becoming more and more of a challenge to maintain, especially in this growing environment. So kind of fast forward into what we're looking at from modernizing that particular infrastructure architecture. The way in which I look at it is we are not a cloud first, but we base our cloud strategy in essence upon where need is. So in this particular case, there is considerable need to continue to explore our SaaS, growing SaaS applications that are being used in the university. So most universities have some sort of LMS or learning management system within the university. Ours is Blackboard. Most universities have some sort of messaging platform. Ours is Office 365. And we also do have legacy Google support, which we also support for our alumni and have supported for other students as well. With all of this, part of modernizing this particular application and infrastructure, we're simplifying it. We're making it easier to manage. We're making it easier to deploy new SaaS applications for the university as that need grows. We're creating moving away from our custom provisioning portal to a modern automated provisioning portal that in essence will be integrated with applications and what resources that they need to have access to in a specific time. Kevin mentioned, throughout the life cycle of various accounts, they go through various iterations of what access they need in a specific time and they would need that particular access. So the way in which we look at this particular integration with Octa is that it's going to provide that single source of management of all of our user objects and providing the right necessary access at that particular point in time. We do recognize the importance of maintaining our support of Shibboleth for various legacy application on-prem applications, and we plan on maintaining that two-prong approach for leveraging both in-house and in the cloud, best of both worlds. Part of looking at identity management is not just provisioning accounts or decommissioning accounts or deprovisioning accounts. Part of that is also the security of the resources, the accounts that go into that. Part of what Shibboleth right now is our ability is our visibility in essence of user accounts and access is obscure. And part of making a move into the Octa world is to simplify our environment, providing one single pane of glass for all of identity management, and that becomes also from a user provisioning, user deprovisioning, user access, user authentication, to fail logins, and also moving into a world where we're adding in the Octa MFA, also pretty much marrying in that multi-factor authentication from our existing MFA products that we currently have online. Workflow. So if I look at the overall workflow of how that really comes around, I look at when a student really begins within the university, and then the various life cycle that they go through and how they transition from one place to the other. Currently, right now, Micro Focus's NetIQ provides us some ability to do that. Part of the problems with that is it's a legacy architecture, legacy application. It is cumbersome to make very minute changes. And ultimately, with the limited staffing, it requires a lot of care and feeding to maintain that particular environment. And then as we transition roles from students within higher ed, that's also a larger challenge. If you look at corporations, larger corporations, there isn't such a larger change in user roles throughout a short period of time. And in higher ed, we have the challenge of having students that are applicants that need certain level of rights, that then move into students, right? And then from there, they become either alumni, they may become grad students, they may become student workers, they may become adjuncts, right? And then from there, they may eventually become one of our trusted faculty and staff in this particular institution. So managing all of that level of roles throughout the life cycle of that particular account, and also making sure that they have the necessary rights throughout all that particular period of time. And then as throughout many transitions to a student's role, we may have the need to deactivate accounts, whether it be students have transferred to other institutions, students have decided not to continue, various other reasons that we may have accounts that need to be deactivated. And then as pretty much the self-service portal, and if we look at the end user experience, the modern user does not necessarily want to call the help desk. They don't want to send a ticket in. They want to be able to do things on their own in the time and space that they would like to do it, and providing that self-sufficient self-service portal for them to manage all of their identity and user management portal needs. So we're talking about that account lifecycle, right? Really and truly, we look at a student coming from an applicant, going then to a student, and then from a student to alumni, and then potentially as staff, as I mentioned before. What's the challenges sort of associated with that? Making sure that the student's status actually change, right? Disabling inactive accounts, and then potentially converting those student accounts to alumni while maintaining all of our regulatory requirements and making sure that our university, our objects, our identities are safe, secure, and we have full visibility, logging, and understanding of exactly where all the accounts are trying to access. When I look at the maturity of our identity access management, right now, we are on a journey, right? That journey starts with somewhat of a fragmented identity where we have Active Directory on-prem, we do use Micro Focus NetIQ, and part of that, we have a lot of homegrown scripts. We don't necessarily have a single pane of glass. So we're moving to a world where we're in stage 2, where we're unifying all of that identity management, modernizing our security by adding multi-factor authentication, and providing certain policies and processes around how people access the applications, services that they need to while they are entitled at the university. As we kind of moved into this world of IDaaS, or Identity Access Management, or Identity as a Service, sorry. Part of the ongoing challenges is, we have grown used to, most universities and other institutions have grown used to having everything behind the firewall. And there's concerns around growing security, but putting those things outside of the firewall would be a SaaS solution. And how do we manage that level of security, making sure that we get the benefits of cloud, but also don't expose ourselves to additional risk? With partnering with Octa, we have developed in-house principles following the best of breed practices. And we've also partnered with a best of breed partner, which is Octa. By also some of the benefits additional to that are, if we look at our disaster recovery plan, before COVID, disaster recovery was a thing that we, and business continuity was a thing that we had on paper. It would only come up when we actually needed it. And now it's turned into a world where COVID over the past 9 months has turned university, higher ed, and other institutions into a place where we're trying to understand what is our business continuity plan. How do we continue to operate in this new world for however short period of time this may be? So part of making sure that we have modernized our IT department adds to providing disaster recovery, business continuity by not relying on an on-prem network in order to facilitate the needs of the university. This is also key to our cloud strategy. If we look at where we're moving as a cloud strategy, we are looking to figure out and understand what is the best position or best location for a lot of the application and services that we need to provide. By allowing and putting Octa in the cloud and our identity access management in the cloud, it gives us that flexibility to decide where we want to put things, and gives us flexibility to onboard new services as that becomes necessary. Once we have that maturity of having a unified identity access management that can give us access to various capabilities around advanced security, governance, where we would be able to provide a little more policies and procedures and fully have a deep dive automated way of knowing what's going on in an environment. So as threats come to the university and others, we are able to see and take action as a result of that. So as we continue that implementation journey, one of my things that I've been to several webinars, and one of the things that everybody paints a rosy picture is that everything is great. And ultimately, when you look at any large implementation, one of the things that has come to mind is making sure that we understand what that journey is, because it is a journey, right? And part of that journey is making sure that we avoid various pitfalls, right? and be successful at the end of the day in implementing our plan of having this modern IT access management system. So the approach we took was a phased approach. I know some universities have gone with the Big Bang approach. We've gone through a phased approach in phasing out some of our older technology while moving on to and scaling on to Octa. That gives us the ability to learn. It gives us the ability to make sure our end users are comfortable with the end user experience, and that we both hand in hand, both the end user and IT, continue to walk down this road together to be successful. The next thing was in selecting integration partners. One of the challenges with IT is that you may find the best piece of technology that exists out there, but if it's not implemented properly and you do not choose the right integration partner, then a lot of times you will end up in challenges. And as you go on that journey, it's going to be filled with potholes. Some of the quick two things, and we've come across this recently, and just to add this in there, is there are two quick things that we noticed in implementing Octa. One was the admin account lockout. So as great as the tool is, there are some precautions that I would probably make sure that you would need to know. One is make sure that when you do create and provision your Octa tenant, that you do exclude your admin Octa accounts. While Octa support has been great, you'd be avoiding the concern of having to call support to get back into your Octa tenant. And then the other thing is, while Octa integration is very powerful, and with that power comes a lot of concerns. One of the things that you also need to make sure is that you don't rename any groups that you do not expect Octa to rename. So one of the things is making sure that that particular box that I have here, the group push settings, is unchecked. So part of this session is really understanding what's the business value. In 2020, I kind of looked at IT from a higher ed institution as providing the accounts for institutions to learn. And we were just pretty much the vehicle to get there. And it was just pretty much an account driven or identity access point of view. As time has gone along with COVID and ransomware attacks, we found the value and more of IT modernizing the technology and the tools that were being used. Most of universities have moved to, at least during this period of time, to a hybrid approach, or at least an approach where we're teaching online 100% of the time. And technology is driving that. And part of needing to make sure that we continue to innovate is making sure that we are anticipating and understanding what the future business needs are. And in modernizing our identity management system, we are making sure that we are putting in the foundation that's necessary to build upon all those future needs that our business will demand us to provide, while also making sure that from a resource point of view, we have the resources in-house to manage and grow as our business needs to grow, because we are modernizing with tools that make our jobs easier. We're automating, and we're doing it in a secure fashion. Because at the end of the day, we are not sure what tomorrow will bring, but we will know that IT for Fairleigh Dickinson University is making an investment into the innovation that will drive our business of higher education. So Kevin, I will turn it back to you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. I said before, I really enjoy these conversations because I get to sit back and learn just like everybody else is. Really, it was great to get some more insight into Fairleigh Dickinson. I have a few questions that I wrote down, but we'll jump right to some of the questions coming in from the audience. And to paraphrase a bit, one of the questions is around some of the metrics to your project. So, can you share at all about how many different applications would be migrated over during this modernization effort? How many people do you have on your team that are working on a project like this? And how long do you think it might take, knowing that, again, you have a phased approach?
Sure. So right now we have about 60,000 objects within our Active Directory environment. That includes roughly about 15,000 students and active students or enrolled students. And then the rest are alumni. We also have about 15,000 employees and its faculty and staff. So all of those objects are within our Active Directory system. From a staffing point of view, we have, right now I have 2 individuals that are primary for identity and access management. And as for implementation, those 2 individuals work with one of your partners' techniques to implement the infrastructure and workflow that we're looking for. From a timing point of view, the phased approach, I'm looking at really modernizing from a workflow point of view, or if I look at the in-house lifecycle management of those accounts, I'm looking to get those accomplished in the next month or 2. We're planning to get that completed before the spring semester. And then in looking at the spring semester, and specifically close to the summer session, really modernizing and moving over to Octa SSO. And then from there, we're going to be taking a higher look at what we've accomplished before the end of the summer session, to then look and see where we go next, whether that is governance and or if there are additional workflows that we want to enable to continue to modernize and automate a lot of the tasks that happen in-house. From an application point of view, I can come up with at least 50 applications, give or take, right now. If you look at the Microsoft suite, and then you look at the Google suite and Blackboard, just to name a few, we are also into using DocuSign for a lot of our electronic forms. And as we go through, there are other in-house applications that are homegrown. So that would be a rough estimate, roughly, if I'm able to look at it. And onboarding, because nothing's broken, part of the onboarding process is going to be that as we get SSO enabled for Octa, we're going to modernize and move those applications over, right? This is going to be a rolling transition, where as we continue to operate the university, we're also going to continue to move applications around. At the end of the day, the end user's experience will be seamless. The interface themselves, they're used to the interfaces, because right now we currently use Shibboleth, and for all modern, it's pretty much username and password. So for the end user, it's providing them the level of username and password to log in. And then in addition to that, we have provided them additional documentation and training to help them along their way.
That's great. One of my questions is and you spoke to, the overall value, the business value, if you will, it can sometimes be intimidating to start a project like this, or to start to march it up the hill, if you will, and start to bring modernization to everyone's attention, particularly now, you're looking for additional investments, additional licenses. So how did you explain this, and how does your team explain this as you're rolling it up to what is the overall potential ROI or the overall value proposition? What was the process like for you to go through that sharing on campus?
Sure. So I would look at that selling from within our executive or senior executive staff, right? Selling it to them first. And part of that is looking at, as you said, the value add. And the value add I see it as in twofold, right? One is providing additional security. In this modern world we're living in, more and more universities have security and identity concerns as some of their top priorities and concerns. In looking at that, Octa provides a single pane of glass that provide us the ability to identify if there is a threat that potentially is going on from any of the resources that we need to access. And then from there, we continue to get requests for new SaaS applications to be integrated. Right now, if I look at the onboarding process, it could be up to 2 weeks to onboard a new application, which from a business point of view, they're used to having instant turnkey applications where they go to the cloud, and for example, AWS or even Azure, and request a service and they get it instantly. Our business does not have the time, nor do we have, from a competition point of view, the ability to have that 2-week lag to integrate a new application. So really and truly, you look at the time value in onboarding new applications, in providing new value and tools to the university is in essence invaluable.
Yeah, great. The question that came in, and again, I'll paraphrase this if you don't see it on there, but and again, for everybody on the call, feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A, but it's related to portals. And I'll begin by saying that we often try to temper our use of the word portal for a lot of campuses, knowing that there's very custom portals that are created for student experiences with calendars and all kinds of resources. And then there's also what Octa may typically discuss as a applications portal. Where do I get access into my systems? What's been granted to me? But the question is, do you plan to eventually use the Octa portal as the user and application interface? Does that make sense, or do you have some thoughts there?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. So if I were to look at the higher ed space, so coming from corporate America, I have different perspectives on things. And from in my prior life, and I would say it would be a portal, right? Because in essence, at the end of the day, I'm an end user. I need access to some of these applications. I just need point and go. In a higher ed institution, it's slightly different. And I right now would look and say that our needs don't necessarily lead us to the Octa portal at this point in time. We are continuing to add new technologies and understand where specifically the business needs us to be. And right now, the business needs us to be in providing the tools to educate the future leaders of the world, right? And in providing that, it's VDI. It's providing them access to the communications and collaboration tools that they need to. So right now, that's where I would drive us to. And we're not at this point in time looking to implement the portal at this point in time.
Yeah, that's fair. And I know we didn't practice any of these questions. If anybody's thinking, oh, these are easy teed up ones, I know you're improvising or going with the flow. I appreciate that. So this is one. Well, we'll stick with the questions coming in. So one was maybe a little bit deeper into the consideration or planning around the Shibboleth legacy apps and the integration. Right. You want to talk through that a little bit?
Sure. So really the question is, was it not practical to move the Shibboleth legacy apps to Octa, or were they not compatible? Part of this is a two-pronged approach. One, I've always of the belief that no service is 100% available, right? And ultimately, what is your backup strategy? What is your backup position? And I also believe in the strength of the consortium around Shibboleth and the community that built that, right? So in part, we do have a lot of homegrown applications. So in my vision, in our world, we're looking at maintaining that on-prem Shibboleth presence. And also from an EDUCAUSE point of view, we're supporting the existing infrastructure. So it's not necessarily that it's not compatible or impractical. At this point in time, it's a community decision to support the existing community that has pretty much gotten us this far, and also maintain an on-campus SSO authentication presence.
That makes sense. Yep, most campuses are large cruise ships, not small boats, so it takes a little while to change, and it makes perfect sense to stay where you are for those. Right. You might see some of the questions coming in if you want to take those around. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So there's a question from Justin. Are you implementing the Octa lifecycle piece at this time as the application authorization piece? So we are. So the first part of what we're doing is the lifecycle. I believe it's the ULM piece of Octa that we're planning to implement. And from there, that's going to drive a lot of the underlying user object orchestration that needs to happen with setting the correct attributes within Active Directory. And Active Directory will continue to drive a lot of the authorization that's going on on our on-prem infrastructure. And then from there, we're planning to use Octa SSO for additional authorization authentication at that point in time, specifically in that particular fashion. Hopefully that answers that particular question.
Yep.
Okay. There's another question. Is it planned to have NetIQ removed from the environment completely? The answer is yes. And the technology, and as I've looked at it, Micro Focus has not put a lot of the innovation into NetIQ. At the time when a NetIQ came out, it was the tool, right? And I've used IBM's identity access management tool as well. NetIQ was the tool at that particular time. And I right now, if you look at where identity access management has gone from a technology point of view, I don't believe NetIQ has kept up, or specifically Micro Focus has put in necessary R&D into that particular product to modernize it. So right now we're moving away from that. And also specifically, you know, we don't have the luxury of personnel that we're going to continue to maintain and train to support that infrastructure. There's another question here. What would be the impact on the project time and completion if we need to replace our username and convention when moving from NetIQ to Octa? So this one is an interesting one, and specifically, we're continuing to look at our username and convention. So I'll take this in twofold. One, the username, or the user principal name or username that users would log into right now, we have pretty much from a format point of view, are looking to standardize, whether it be from our faculty and staff a little bit more, but our students have been standardized from a format point of view, and that's from a username point of view. When we're looking at going forward, some of the challenges associated with moving or between the roles kind of play into what is the username that is being used, right? So at this particular time, what we took the approach was like for like, and then modernize as we went along, right? So one, we get the right tool to get us to where we need to, and then we make the necessary changes within that tool. So right now, we have not changed any username parameters. My plan is, and the future look is to change that, but to use Octa as the tool to help us change that.
Makes sense.
Great. I think that was the last question that had come through on the list. Kevin, I don't know if you had anything additional kind of from the Octa point of view and reviewing the session that you wanted to ask.
Well, I do have one more question for Christopher, and again, we didn't practice anything, so it might be a lead balloon, so that's fine. But when we've been talking a lot about modernization, which for a lot is about bringing directories into the cloud, and as you're talking about, as you mentioned, moving things out of the perimeter, right? That's the whole zero trust mindset, as well as you're moving beyond the firewalls of campus and bringing it up. I think it's unlocked some potential around identity management. Whereas a lot of campuses, our conversations have been really strictly focused around students, staff, and faculty, the onboarding, the offboarding efforts, and all of the things that happen within those bumper guards. So my question is, do you see a need or an opportunity for either your campus or maybe other campuses that you've seen to extend access well beyond just kind of those roles itself? I guess the question would be like, how far out are graduates given access to certain resources today? And could you see a day where if I come in for an FDU basketball game or whatever, all of a sudden I'm starting to develop an FDU identity that could also grow as I go into advancement or donor relations or something else, but keeping that within that one directory place? I don't know. What do you think about that idea?
Sure. So I think it's a couple of things. One, it's need-based, right? So if you look at the Eduroam community, right, there is a need to share globally, not just within the US, but globally, access to some of the basic functions within a university. And that could be Wi-Fi, that could be access to libraries, et cetera. I think as we continue down this road, more and more institutions are going to continue to form more and more consortiums to work together, right? We have a similar goal to educate and not necessarily compete. But with that comes, how do we share that information, right? If you look at what's happening with a lot of the COVID research, is being driven by a lot of the, not just pharmaceutical companies, but also a lot of the medical schools, right? And research around those particular areas. A lot of that information is being shared. It would be easy if we had all a common federated world to live within, where my identity can be shared with other institutions, and I can access whatever needs that I need to, but all of that is also controlled, right? So part of providing that federation is also understanding where the boundaries are. and how we best can protect the identity and the resources that are being accessed. So I think if we had to look at this going down the road, I think eventually a lot more consortiums are going to be made. A lot more institutions work with sharing information, and as more institutions adopt Octa or a simple or similar federated identity management portal, I think you'll see more and more of us working together in that form, in that particular fashion. And also, if you look through the life cycle, of an account, as you mentioned, from student to applicant to student to alumni to potentially as a faculty member, how does that, from a CRM point of view, how are we able to understand what is that person's identity throughout the life cycle? And I think as more and more we get to a world where understanding the user identity and more specifically customizing their experience, I think that's going to become more and more important to differentiating one institution from the other. So I think we're entering into a world where that exists and will exist, but it will take some time. And I think with Octa and other partners trying to create that ultimate bridge that is consistent across various institutions, that's going to make it easier for that to happen.